Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart Center Horizons. I'm your host, Sachin Anthony, and today we have an incredibly insightful episode in store for you. Joining us is Adele Hartland, the visionary conscious living empowerment coach and founder of Lacuna Coaching Limited. Adele has been guiding leaders, entrepreneurs, and individuals on a transformative journey toward living authentically with purpose and in full alignment with the core values. In an era where technology, especially AI, is reshaping the way we work and connect, Adil's expertise on emotional intelligence and conscious living brings a unique perspective. Through her coaching, Adil combines powerful methodologies like neurolinguistic programming, heart math, positive psychology, and more to help people unlock their true potential. Today, we are diving into how emotional intelligence and conscious leadership can not only enhance personal fulfillment, but also create lasting impact in business. We will explore the fascinating intersection of emotional intelligence and AI and discuss the importance of leading with heart and uncover how conscious living can guide us to thrive in a world increasingly driven by technology, along with a small talk on empathy, which affects our real life. So, without further ado, Adil, welcome to our show. We are thrilled to have you here today. Okay, can we start whenever you're ready?
Okay, what do you want me to start with?
Okay, so my first question is that can you share with me what is mean by leading with heart truly means? Like, why do you believe emotional intelligence is really essential for leaders nowadays?
Well, I think a lot of people talk about leading from heart. And I think it's just sometimes something people like to say. I mean, leading from heart is really about us being compassionate
Okay.
and just understanding people. Emotional intelligence is about understanding our emotions and being able to regulate, as well as being able to understand other people's emotions and be able to respond. Now, a lot of the time we react versus respond. And so I think as leaders, it's really important for people to have a self awareness, to build on their emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence can be built. And, if we look at what's really disconcerting is if we look at over the last decade or so, and especially with our younger generation, IQ has increased, whereas emotional intelligence has actually declined. And so, when we think about that, it's like, well, that's going to be based on leadership, right? Because behaviors are learned. You look at children, children don't listen, they watch. And so it's exactly the same when we're in an organization. Your organization, if you're running a business, it's like a big family, right? And, if you think about individuals that are in a business, you spend more time there than you would at home. Okay.
Yeah.
And so sometimes if culture is really toxic there, if mom and dad or the leaders are constantly fighting, the same thing happens, right? If we're not enjoying that environment. So, emotional intelligence being, I think the most important thing is first and foremost is to understand yourself because a lot of people don't understand themselves. They don't understand their emotional triggers. They don't understand how they potentially come across to people because a lot of times it's a learned behavior. So no one's actually done the inner work. And I think more now than ever, it's so important for us to be doing this. And it should be happening in organizations. And it really should be something that organizations are looking to do. The softer skills are so much more important. And when you look at leadership roles, the things they're looking for are the softer skills. And they actually mean that people are more successful with these softer skills. Because let's think about it. I actually said to someone else the other day, where he said to me, oh, you do the fluffy stuff. And I said, sorry, the fluffy stuff. He says, yeah, like all the fluffy woo-woo stuff. And I said, okay, yeah, so people, I deal with people. It's all, for me, it's about kind of managing people and developing people. How many people, like how many of your clients are people? How many of your
Yeah.
staff are people? 100%. So Tim Wright said that's a big percentage to be classed as fluffy or not important. It's the most important thing. So I think, yeah, I mean, that's probably a bit of a waffle, but I hope I answered your question.
Then I would like to ask that if emotional intelligence is so much important for our life, then how would you suggest for the people who are taking mental health, but the bosses who give us more overtime jobs, like they make you to work overtime. So will that affect the emotional intelligence of a really intelligent person who is working so good, but still his mental health is disturbed? So what will be your suggestion for them?
So, I mean, look, let's be honest. A business, people start a business because they want to make money. Businesses need to be profitable. However, not to the detriment of the people that are building that business. So it's about changing perspectives, changing the idea of profit first versus people first. Without people, your business isn't going to do anything, right? Now, for a leader who is stressed about the bottom line or is not going to make the bills, he's going to push, right? He's going to push harder. He's him or she. I don't want to, get to be him or her, or a they. So it's about being aware, first of all, about these things. If we build resilience within our teams, okay, they will be able to handle those moments where they need to give a little bit more. Overtime happens sometimes. Great. Of course it does. But if we don't understand how to self-regulate, if we don't understand how to manage our own bodies, right? We're like the most cutting edge technology known to man, the human being. We just don't have a manual, right? And so if you think about it, use the analogy of a car. If you constantly got your foot on the accelerator and then you slam on brakes, how long is that car going to last? It's not. But if you're putting in the right oil and you're giving it water when it needs to, and you're doing the services and you're doing all those kind of things, you're going to get a lot more miles out of that car and that person. So it's about business is business and we want to make money. Fantastic. But what about really investing in those individuals, teaching them about how we self-regulate, understanding, that your heart is your control center. We think a
Yeah.
heart's just a pump. It's not. It sends signals to the brain 5 times more than the brain sends signals to the heart, right? Why do you think one of the biggest issues that we have in this world is heart disease? It's one of the biggest things, and then cancers and things like that. So understanding how we can self-regulate and not keep on overexerting our hearts. It's simple things, breathing exercises. Okay, simply learning how to breathe. Everybody thinks meditation means you've got to sit with your legs crossed and chant. It's not. It's literally breathing. So when you breathe and your heart gets into a rhythm, it sends signals to the rest of the body. Don't worry, we're fine. It helps your cells actually grow and develop. Whereas if it's constantly stressed, those cells downregulate. So if you're spending the immune system uses the most amount of energy in the body. We know this because when you're sick, you can't do anything, right? So if we're spending a lot of time stressing, okay, that energy is getting used. So that
Yeah.
means something's got to downgrade. So we've got to take energy from the immune system or from the building of the cells and stuff like that to spend on stressing, which means your cells start downregulating. They don't develop. And so if you've got a downregulated cell, when that replicates, you're replicating another downregulated cell. So stress literally eats us at a cellular level.
So it's better instead of we telling to the people like right, many people who want to take a break, they come out of the office and they just have a drink or smoke. Instead of that, they can try this breathing exercise.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, that those things are coping mechanisms that we've developed. We live in a
Yeah.
very overstimulated world,
Mhm.
highly overstimulated world. Our stress response, how we deal with stress, it's the same stress response that we have from when we were running away as cavemen from wild animals. It's the same stress response, but it is now activated when there's a late email or when we've missed a deadline. So can you imagine if you're running away from a wild animal like 10 times a day? You'd be absolutely exhausted.
Yeah.
That's what's
So
happening. But our body is responding to that, and we're getting all these pulses of cortisol throughout our body. Simple breathing. There's certain things like I'm a heart math coach, so a lot of the techniques that we use are there to actually help build resilience, help to get you into a coherent state, so body and mind, and to actually repair some of the kind of damage that cortisol creates by creating more DHEA. So DHEA builds us up. Okay.
Yeah.
So it repairs, whereas cortisol breaks us down. Developing a bit more of that, we're taking time. It's like a servicing. It's like a constant service, managing the system far better. So, I think it's really important when we're looking at businesses, like understanding emotional intelligence, because if we understand what our triggers are, we're not going to be getting stressed about a lot of things. Because remember, emotion is created by how we perceive the world.
Yeah.
And how we perceive the world is based on the lens through which we see the world. And that's the beliefs that we have, the ideas about who we are as an individual. Okay. And so when we start opening our minds and understanding that nothing is fact and how we perceive something makes all the difference, we can change how we perceive something, which will change how we feel. So I believe equipping people with these kind of skills that we don't get, we don't understand how the mind works, we don't understand how the human body works, we don't know how to self-regulate or to look after ourselves on that level. Okay, all we know is how to get onto the hamster wheel and run as fast as we can.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. We never focus on our own body. We always focus on what we have to do, always overtiming the work. And we want to impress the boss. We never focus what our body actually needs. Actually, our body is not always a complete running machine. We just need some kind of a rest, just like as you told, self-regulating breathing exercise is actually necessary so that you can relieve all from your mental health, so that you can be away from that. So what you said is actually true, and I really appreciate you for telling you that. So that I think now whoever is listening to this podcast, maybe they will get an solution like what to do. What about listening to music? Can that also be like a relaxation hormone to our body, just like breathing exercise?
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of things that you can do. I mean, walking can be great as well, because when we're walking, what happens is your kind of eyes are actually doing this, which kind of can calm you down as well. So walking is fantastic. Um, Walking, listening to, I mean, I sometimes you get walking meditations that are fantastic. Some of the programs that I run, we kind of provide walking meditations because not everybody wants to lie down and have a really quiet meditation. So you can have really upbeat meditations. You can have meditations that help you visualize like an exciting future. And, it's all about training your mind to see things like, if I say to you, think about a time that you were really miserable, okay, where you felt terribly down in the dumps. Like if you close your eyes, you can think about that time and you can take yourself there physically. You can feel that. You know what that feels like, right?
Yeah,
Just as if I say to you, okay, do you remember a time when you felt amazing, like you're on top of the world, life could not get
yeah,
better? And I can see you remembering something because you're getting the smile on your face and you're like, yeah. So you're going there to both those places with thought alone.
yeah. That's actually correct. I'm just closing my eyes and thinking.
Yeah. So thought
Yeah,
alone, you can go wherever you want. So when I say to people, like, imagine the best possible outcome, they say, oh, but that's fantasy. I said, yeah, but the worst possible outcome is also fantasy. You just think that
yeah,
like bad is more realistic. That's based
yeah,
on our conditioning. It's based on like how we see the world.
yeah,
Like we somehow think bad is more likely. So it's about
yeah.
changing your kind of headspace to be like, well, hang on a second, like what if it wasn't going to be like that? What if because there are so many potential outcomes, right? But we get fixated on that one thing, and then guess what? It happens, and then we go, oh, I knew it. It's like, well, yeah, it was definitely going to happen because it's all you were focused on.
And what can we say to the people? As you said, it takes back to a backside of the memory like that. For example, I'm closing my eyes and I'm just remembering some of the memories so that I can be in the top of the world. So there are some people, instead of going to the top of the world with a happy moment, they will go back to the sad memories, which is already stored in the brain. So how will you suggest to make a center of focus between the past memories, overcome that, and go to the happy world?
Well, look, it takes time. You've got to spend some time on your healing, right? And this is the thing that we talk about. We talk about conditioning, we talk about healing, we talk about trauma, all of these things. We've all been through trauma. We've all had difficult things. But what happens is our minds get a little bit lazy and we get used to a certain way of doing things.
Yeah,
So, most, they say that like, 80% of what you think is normally negative. It's got a negative bias to it. And 95% of what you're thinking today is what you thought yesterday. Because you remember your unconscious, subconscious mind is 95%. Your conscious is 5%. So this is why when we try and make a change, okay, it's 5% against 95%. I mean, who do you think is going to win that tug of war? So you've got to become a lot more conscious. So this is why I talk about conscious living, right? It's about us becoming aware of What are my thoughts and feelings? Not just letting it run on autopilot. Because what happens is when people get, it's like, for example, when people go through depression, it's because they've been thinking about the same things, thinking about, oh, my life is awful. This is not that. I don't like my job. I don't like this. I don't like that. And when we think of one thing we don't like, we can find all the things we don't like. And it's like digging a hole, right? And when I say to people, start practicing gratitude, it's like, I'm like, 3 things that you're grateful for in the morning. People are like, it's like,
Yeah,
grateful for the
exactly.
sunshine, grateful for my coffee, grateful that I woke up, grateful
Yeah,
for, you can be grateful for absolutely anything. But the thing is, we don't know how to do it because we haven't been taught how to do it. So it's about repetition and reprogramming. So when we want to do this stuff, it's about being consistent. And this is why people get coaches, right? Because we want to do these things, we want to change these things, but we need someone to keep us consistent with it. Because what
yeah,
happens, and I know I did it before I did a lot of my investment personal changes, I knew about things. I knew about manifestation, and I knew about affirmations, and I knew all these things. But it was like, how did I actually integrate this in my day-to-day life so that I was consistently doing it so I could consistently see changes? Because if you do something for one day, it's like going to the gym for one day. You don't find muscles the next day. They're not there. You've
yeah,
got to go to the gym consistently for like 3 months. Okay, and it's hard work, and then you eventually see a muscle, and you're like, wow. But eventually, by the third month, you go to gym and you know exactly what you're doing, and it feels great and it feels comfortable, and do you know what I mean? You get into a rhythm because we don't like change. The subconscious doesn't like change. Remember, it wants to keep us safe. Subconscious wants to keep you safe. So you've got to push through it. You've got to really want it. Sometimes I say to people, do you really want change? Because if you want change, it's going to take some hard work. You've got to dig deep. You've got to be prepared to be vulnerable. And it's like sometimes people don't want change because it doesn't feel that painful yet where they are. So they're like, well, it's comfortable. I'll just go out for a drink on the weekend and it'll be fine. And then I'll start Monday again feeling like, oh, I hate my life. And then like by Friday, I'm like, yay, let's go out for a drink. And then, it's like repeat, eat, sleep, repeat.
same
And
cycle keeps
if
on
that's the
repeating.
choice that people want to do, they can do that, because this is the thing. That's what happens is we kind of self-medicate per se, whether it's having a drink or taking a sleeping pill or whatever the case is. I mean, look at society as a whole. Like look at the issue we have with the opiates and things like that. It's self-soothing. It's a way in which we can self-soothe because people don't want to feel the pain. They don't want to, dig deep. But once you go in there and you start realizing that life does not have to be life does not have to be difficult. Doesn't have to
Actually,
be.
whatever you just said exactly applies to me. Once I was in a painful situation, and the same thing, whatever you said. Like Sunday, I will be really happy, and when the Monday hits with the alarm, I have to get up and I think, oh my God, will be a bad day. Again, it's Monday. Why can't it be again Sunday? I wish
Yeah.
it has to be Sunday always. And whenever the birthday comes near, I always used to think that is it so near that I'm nearing to the death? Like, you're reducing one age, it keeps on reducing. But I will just feel like, why can't it be the same age as I was in before? It could have been really happy that the whole day, spending the time with the party, with the friends. It was so amazing for that. But whatever you said, thank you so much for sharing that opinion that how to overcome this bad memories and go back to the top of the memories where you can sing top of the world. So I will ask you the next question, like, how have you seen the leaders transform the team dynamics or company culture by embracing emotional intelligence? Can you just give me a real life example if you have witnessed now?
Well, I think, I look at like, for example, I worked with a client and it's often the case with businesses. So I do a lot of behavioral assessments as well. So understanding what our behavioral tendencies are. And so you get dominance, you get influence, you get steady, and you get conscientious. Now, two of them are very people orientated, two of them are very task orientated. Some are introverts, some are extrovert, right? So, but it's a really easy way to understand what our preferences are and how we can work together and how we can potentially be conflicted. And so, most of the time, businesses have what we call high D. So they're the fast thinking, move fast, very decisive type of individuals. typical people that drive businesses. But most of the people that support them are the slower paced, more analytical, more cautious, careful people that need to kind of worry about the steps in between one and, 100. And so when someone has got a high D, but with low emotional intelligence, for example, they won't be able to understand. There won't be that compassion. There won't be that empathy. They won't be able to understand. All they're interested in is achieving their goal. Okay. And everybody else just has to get them there. But when there's that understanding that, well, I need them to get me there can be more compassion, there can be more understanding. So I found that, so I sometimes use DISC and I use emotional, what's what we call DISC awareness. So it shows the emotional awareness of the individual as well as their DISC profiles. And that can be really helpful because, and I've seen with a lot of mine, especially when they've got the D, the high D as the business owner, when they start understanding that the people around them are different behavioral styles. They need different things. Like D's, for example, don't go into the details. They just want this done. They are interested in the outcome and how quickly they can get it. Whereas, for example, your what I call C's are also task orientated, but they are all about the details. They're all about having it precise and correct, and they don't move very fast. So once they started understanding, I know with one group, I did a group program where just him understanding and them also being able to be confident enough to explain what it is that they actually need, that they need more detailed information, that they need to have clarity on what they need to do. It just immediately, so awareness is key, right? Awareness, it doesn't necessarily have to be just with emotional intelligence. It's an awareness. So I talk about awareness as being the number one foundation for us. Once we become aware and then we start to acknowledge, so we understand, we acknowledge where there's perhaps areas we need to do, then we can become aligned, right? Aligned with who it is we want to be, how we want to be in the world, what we want to achieve. That's when we start taking action. Because too many people take action from an unaligned place, which gives you unaligned outcomes. Okay? And that's when you get actualization. You get the really clear achievement of what you want because it's aligned with what's important for you. And this is the same, whether it's a business, whether it's people within the business, following that is most important. So awareness is key. So just simple things on understanding how someone could be perceived, but that all adds to our emotional intelligence.
Have you been introvert or extrovert during your childhood?
So actually, I think when I was younger, I was quite introverted. I was actually very shy.
Okay.
And I think as I'm actually not, I'm actually not. Like if we look in the DISC stuff, I'm actually not. I'm quite extroverted. But I would actually say I'm an extroverted introvert. So as much as I enjoy being around people, I also need my alone time. And so I don't know if I do a lot around human design as well, which tells us exactly what our energetics are. And how our energy works. And so it makes sense. I love being around people. I'm great with people, but I do need my own time just to decompress as well. So I would say, yeah, I'm an introverted expert.
So, are you right now an introvert or an extrovert?
No, like right now, I mean, I'd say I'm extroverted, but I'd say combination. I think it's I think it's a very narrow label to give people because I think it depends on so many things for some people. So it could depend on the environment. So a lot of people, I've met people that would be classed as introverted, but given the right space and given, ask the right questions and stuff, they can really open up. So I don't necessarily like to kind of label just as, because I don't think people are just one or the other.
So let me ask you a funny question. What do you think of who am I right now? Am I an introvert person or do you feel that I am an extrovert person?
So I would say that you probably, I mean, if I think about discs, this is why I actually look at people. I look at people based on like what I think the disc is. So I definitely think what would be call is like an I is influence, right? So they enjoy people, they like chatting, let's catch up, let's do that. But I think there's probably also a bit of C in you. And maybe even some S. So the S is like very supportive. They're concerned about people and the team and everybody else. So we're a blend, right? We're not just one or the other. And I think there's potentially maybe some detail there as well to see, but I'd say probably maybe mostly IS which is kind of people orientated. But your I is a little bit faster, they're a little bit more excitable. They'll be like, hey, this is so fun. And then your S is like really kind of concerned, great team player, like, oh, I'll help you with this, I'll do that. So I'd say you're probably a blend of an IS.
You know what? This is funny that I'm just shocked that you're telling exactly about me, whatever my friends are saying. I am just thinking that do you live next to my house or are you watching me actually or not? I have no idea. You just told correctly of who am I.
It's easy to learn for people, and it really helps us understand who more, and so we can match people where they're at, right?
So I would like to ask with that, I would like to continue the same question, like what made you become life empowerment coach? And what made you to embrace the emotional intelligence such that you became a life empowerment coach to many entrepreneurs? Like how do you give suggestions to them?
Well, I worked for a company too hard for too long till I got to
Mhm.
burnout. They had terrible leadership. Um, there was a revolving door. People were constantly leaving. And it was because there's poor leadership there. It was profits first versus people. And I got myself to burnout, almost working for them just over 10 years, just under 10 years. And so that's when I started going into change management, and I was really like interested in changing people. And I've always been really drawn to people. I wanted to do psychology when I was a kid, and then I kind of chose not to. I was too lazy to go study for 10 or so years. And then when I left them, I actually met someone when I was in London. One of the coaches I met, they said to me, "You should really get into coaching." And I started working. I started my business first, basically just subcontracting to smaller businesses to do like set contracts, like help them with certain things, just set up things like things that they perhaps didn't have money for a long-term role from on. And the more I did that, the more people said, "Oh, can you help with this? And can you help with this performance review? And can you help with this? And can you?" And it was all the people stuff. And I realized, wow, people really struggle dealing with people. And it's always just been something that's natural for me. I've just had an intuitive knack towards it. I sense people and I get an understanding of people really quickly. And so obviously I just furthered my studies in all these kind of things to support with it. And so now I think, the important thing is, businesses need to understand, and I understand when a business starts, there's a lot of things going on, but we see people talk, Richard Branson says it, build the people and they'll build your business. And it's absolutely true. People are, I deal with sometimes a lot with redundancies, and people are extremely loyal. When they're part of something and they feel part of something, they'll do anything, right? But there needs to be a give and take, and it's two-sided, right? So, giving people the skills, helping them to better manage themselves, helping them to understand themselves better. Do you know what I mean? Like all
Yeah.
it is people have got to deal with the pressures of life, of home, of business, and helping them to better do that, to become the best version of themselves. I mean, like you're going to have such loyalty there. You're going to have, business will be just far more profitable in the long run. And people will be happier. Our society needs to be happier. Like the mental health crisis that we're having across the globe is just unacceptable. It should not be happening.
People are really lucky to have you in UK. I
Yeah, well,
wish,
I'm global. I'm global. So you have me anywhere you need me.
yeah, I wish you were in India so that we would have had a nice life empowerment coach in India, to be honest.
Yeah. I've got friends in India. I'm planning to actually come there. I visit a lot in different places. I'm currently visiting in South Africa at the moment. I'll be in London next week. So yeah, and my business is global, and I want to help as many as possible. So a lot of my stuff is done online and it's all able to. So
Okay, so my next question will be about empathy. So we always say that empathy is the cornerstone for the relationship, right? So what I can want to ask is like, how can we actively cultivate that empathy in a world that often feels disconnected?
well, I mean, this is the thing that we're talking about, right? So empathy is it's what our emotional intelligence is. Like how, we're disconnected because we're like I said, we're in an overstimulated world. Um, so it's not, each of us has to do the work. Each of us has to take more time to be present in the moment, to be present with our feelings. Why do you think COVID was such a challenge for everybody? Because we had to be on our own and with our own thoughts and our own feelings, and not constantly distracted by consuming and being out and doing all sorts of things. So I think what's important is, you know, we want the world, we we all love the idea of feeling connected. We love the idea of love. You know, we all want that. Everybody's looking for that. They're looking in the wrong place. Everybody's looking for it online.
Yeah.
And it's about connecting more. Look, don't get me wrong. I'm not opposed to technology. I think technology is fantastic. I think it's a way to leverage. I think it's a way to actually leverage our time so that we can spend more time doing the important things. I don't think it will ever replace the human being. It cannot. Okay. I still think there's elements of AI and technology that can never be replaced or replicated, because that feeling, that connection, that thing that we're all looking for is what's important. So, I think for us to really truly connect with people, we have to have done the work. You can only connect with someone to the depth at which you've connected with yourself. And I know that sounds super like deep and whatever, but it is. Do you know what I mean? Like you've got to find what what needs to be healed within you, because otherwise you just repeat the same patterns over and over and again. Like if you think about, for example, serial daters, they go from one relationship to the next, to the next, to the next, because they want to be alone. But what happens is they just keep taking their stuff and it keeps on getting dumped into the relationship. And the same thing happens because it's a cycle, because you've never done the healing. This is the same thing, whether it's an intimate relationship, whether it's a work relationship, those kind of things are the same thing. So it's really about taking radical responsibility for ourselves, taking responsibility and accountability for how we feel. Okay, you're taking responsibility for your feelings, not it's so and so's fault, they made me angry. No, they didn't make you angry. Yes, they stepped on a landmine that already existed within you and set it off and created a complete chaotic explosion, but it was your landmine to start off with. So it's really about us all just taking radical responsibility, living a more conscious life, understanding like where our blind spots are, so that we can get to a place where we are not just running on the hamster wheel, reacting to things. We are actually able to make a conscious decision and respond versus react. So yeah, a bit of a long-winded response there, but I think there's a number of things that we have to do before we can get to that point. We all want to connect. We're all looking for that perfect relationship, but are you who you want to attract? Like, because sometimes people are like, oh, I want someone who's got all their stuff sorted out and they've got the money and they got the this, yet you don't have the job, you don't have the this, you're just looking for someone to rescue you. You've got to, like, to attract that person and to be that, you've got to be that. Okay. For us to really have healthy relationships, we've got to be at the same place where we both are wanting to learn, wanting to develop. We're not going into relationships from a crutch perspective. And I know relationships might not have everything to do with business, but we, as an individual, we are multifaceted. And so the person that you've got in business has got a relationship or hasn't got a relationship. So it's about human beings and how we can overcome a variety of things, and so that we can have better connection, and so we can have better relationships, both work, outside of work, family relationships. Comes down to you as the individual. I know everybody doesn't like to hear that, because we either want a pill that's going to solve it or someone that's going to fix it with the wave of a magic wand. But unfortunately, you've got to take the journey.
That's exactly really motivating for me. So you were speaking about AI and all this emotional intelligence and how to embrace this empathy kind of thing. So I have an exact question based on AI. What I wanted to ask is that, this AI is changing nowadays a lot. We saw like so many advancements are there in this artificial intelligence, and it is changing completely the lives of every individual. Before that, we used to rely on somebody else, like a person, like to help something, or if you want to ask for help from anyone, we used to ask from them. But now, since AI is came, it has changed literally. So my question will be like, do you think that it will affect the leaders who want to bring changes in the business? Will that affect the emotional intelligence because of this AI?
I think, look, AI is here to stay. It's not going to stop. And I think we've got to embrace it from, I think it, like I say, I think we can leverage it and it can really help with a lot of things. But I think the time that we save using AI should be spent on further developing our emotional intelligence and developing our people. A lot, I've got some businesses who are, really invested in people. And then I've got some businesses like, oh, if I invest in them, what if they leave? And I'm like, what if they stay? So, you've got to think of it, like I said, like a family, right? How, parents, they have rules and they have a way in which we behave. There's a culture, right? At a home, there's a culture. So a business has to create a culture. If you don't create a culture, it creates itself. And if there's no defined way in which you're doing it, it becomes crazy. So I think there needs to be a balance more so now than ever, so that we don't get lost in that. Because AI is just that. It's AI. And we know that AI is AI. And as much as people think it's going to be good, like there's a difference between AI and something that's coming, you know, AI writing something versus something straight from your heart, right? AI is not going to know about that, at least not now. Maybe in the future, who knows? But I think it's an opportunity for us to, that's how I see it. The more time it gives us, the more time we can invest in ourselves and our relationships and stuff like that, because we can make things efficient.
What will you say about the people nowadays they're embracing, as we were talking about AI, like not to depend too much on AI. Let's just focus on ourselves and connecting with the people. So there is, some kind of a report which I see in social media when I just scroll the reels of Instagram. I see that people are actually connecting with the AI bots who are acting or resembling like the real person. For example, if I have some kind of an what to say, like mental health, like I'm in depressed mood. I want a friend, but a friend is unavailable. They, instead of going with that friend, they talk with that AI. Like, there are many AIs nowadays they're bringing it so that they can tackle your emotions and you can spend more time with the AI instead of people. What would you suggest? Should we really embrace that AI, or why can't we just connect it similarly to the people who are outside?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not into that at all. Like, I don't believe that a computer can help us with mental health. Like, I mean, I think mental health is more about us being grounded, you know what I mean? Like, understanding how to be more human. And people, a lot of the time, it's because they're alone. If people are feeling alone and they're feeling they don't have connection. Um, you look at the awful things that happen with the catfishing and stuff like that, taking advantage of that kind of thing. So I don't think that we should be spending so much time online. I really don't. And I think where there's opportunity to not be spending time online, and don't get me wrong, like I run a lot of my coaching online, but it's about creating a space where we have got to find things where we're talking about connecting. We kind of going through vulnerability and various things like that. But when I talk about online, I'm talking about scrolling and, Facebooking and Instagram and just going down the rabbit hole. Because, if you're feeling lonely and then you look at your friends' wedding pictures and that's what is not perpetuating it. So, um, yeah, I think there should be more time. I think everybody needs to take their own responsibility, because if there's no awareness, right, that you scrolling and you're not aware that why you're feeling the way you are, and you haven't learned to reach out for help. We've all got to take responsibility. No one's going to save us. But this is where I do think it's important, where we can help people getting more aware of the tools and skills that are out there. So we empower them. It's about empowering people. It's about empowering them to be able to make their own decisions, to feel confident in who they are, to feel inspired, to feel excited about life, not to be worried about all the fear mongery. And like, for example, I don't watch the news. Why would you want to watch the news? It's like so depressing. Do you know what I mean? So, like, focus on the things that make you happy. Because if that, you know what I mean? A lot of people say, oh, but you can't live with your head in the sand. It's not about living with my head in the sand. It's about me focusing my energy on the things that are important to me and that are going to get me closer to my goals. I can't focus on everything in the whole world. You go nuts.
Exactly.
We don't have enough bandwidth for that. I focus on what's important to me, the people that are important to me, the difference I want to make in the world. So yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a simple answer to that, but I think the more leaders are making a change, doing a difference. I did a post on something on LinkedIn the other day as well, just about changing the narrative about what success is, right? Success does not mean burnout. Success does not necessarily mean having $1 million, right? What does success mean for you? And so we need to change that. And what does that mean? And like success is about happiness because a lot of people can be successful but not very happy.
Yeah, actually
So
they
yeah.
think that if money is there, they say it is a success. Instead of focusing on happiness, connecting with the people, and enjoying their life with the people, and fostering all that good cultural values, only that will bring us success. But you know what people say, success will not bring. I mean, that will not give the way for success. They say that success, if you want success, means the money is the important. What will you suggest to the people that should we really focus on collecting money more, or should we really focus on connecting people?
I mean, I think it's different for everybody, right? So some people, for them, that might be what's important. But, for me, I think for me, happiness is a measure of success. And so do you wake up in the morning excited about life? Are you excited about what you're doing? Because I've had a lot of people that are super successful and they're making loads of money, but they drink too much, for example, because they're actually quite stressed, or they've got other bad habits that are impacting their health and well-being. So, it doesn't matter what it is for you. There's no judgment about what success is. But I do think being happy is a much better goal to have because there's so many people that are desperately unhappy, and shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. You know what I mean? Like life is a beautiful thing. And when we change that, right, as opposed to what we think we should be doing, what everybody else says we would do, comparing about what everybody else is doing, why? Why? Life can be whatever you want it to be. You can do whatever you want. You don't have to buy a house if you don't want to. You can travel the world for your entire life if you want to. You don't have to, you know what I mean? You can do whatever it is that you want to do. What does your heart tell you it wants to do? And follow it. Don't listen to whatever it says you can and can't do. No,
You
that's what
just
success
gave,
is like being happy with who you are and 100% following what is important for you, not what your parents or your teachers or your friends or anyone else think or say you should be doing. So that's what I think is important is when you get to that point where you're like, you know what, this is my life. I'm choosing to live it the way I want to. And that's with just being happy and doing things that bring me joy. Positive things, not constructive things, because sometimes people do things that aren't very constructive that bring them joy, but are in fact, self-medicating, whatever the case is. So I mean, you know what I'm talking about, yeah. Um, but yeah, that's what I'd say would be my aim for people, and a lot of the time when I'm coaching people, it's around them really just believing in themselves and understanding like their self-worth and that they can do whatever they want. A lot of people are living life based on what they think they should be doing based on what their parents want them to be doing. It comes from a place of love. There's no bad intention from parent or person, right? It's just that sometimes we're living a life that we think we should be and not the life we really want to. That makes us unhappy.
well, you just gave a life mantra. I think the podcast listeners will really be engaging to this life mantra so just now we gave. It's really engaging for me that I also should follow the same thing. I think all the listeners, whoever would be listening to this podcast when I release, I think you just gave an extraordinary mantra, to be honest. Thank you so much for giving that good mantra. I can
My
also follow the
pleasure.
same.
My pleasure.
So I would like to ask the next question that now you were often we're speaking about this conscious living. You were talking about emotional intelligence, and we were talking about how this AI is affecting. So what I can ask is like, do you think is there any kind of a principles where it could support the leaders to maintain the humanity and empathy in an environment such that from the AI itself you can influence them?
Sorry.
For so long, we were talking about tackling this emotional intelligence. We were talking about empathy in a relationship. We were talking about how to embrace the AI in the future. So my question is like, do you want to suggest like, is there any principles where the leaders can use it and embrace and maintain the humanity in the world?
Sorry, I've lost you there. I don't actually know what you're asking. Like, what are you, in principle with regards to what?
Principles where the leaders the leaders of the world, all the leaders in the world, they maintain some kind of a principle based on this emotional intelligence and empathy, where they can maintain humanity so that it can bring people together.
our leaders of the world, whew, that's a big ask.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I think the same principles, this is why this is why for me it's about why I'm a conscious living empowerment coach. For me, it's all about conscious living, and conscious living, it filters into everything, right? So when we, for example, have a um like when we get like have a negative response to someone says something and we all of a sudden snap, right? That's not conscious living, right? Because we've snapped at something when an unconscious response is taken over. Now, if we're going to be talking about, I don't really like to go into politics at all. But for example, we have world leaders out there that I would not say they are particularly conscious living, okay, at all. I think there's, just what happens in politics, let's be honest, it's all smoke and mirrors and it's for this and there's always an ulterior motive. So, I mean, we have had some leaders in the past who I would say have got that kind of conscious living aspect to them, few and far between. I mean, the kind of my methodology within my business is I call it the 5A choice concept. So everything's underpinned by choice, right? So we have a choice no matter. And so when I talk about alignment, I start off first the awareness, right? So awareness of who we are, what we want to do. Then acknowledgement of our full potential and perhaps some of the limitations that are there. Then alignment with the thoughts, behaviors, actions that are in line with the person we want to be. That's when we start taking action, and that's when we obtain actualization. Now, each of these at any point is underpinned by choice. So I would say that is the one thing, there's choice, right? And I know a lot of times, sometimes we say, oh, I didn't have a choice. I had to. We always have a choice. It's just going to be that sometimes we feel like we don't have a choice because there's a fear of losing a job or needing money or whatever those kind of things are. So this is where conscious living comes into it, is for us to really be understanding what some of those things are, because sometimes we're doing things that are not aligned because we feel like we don't have a choice, because we're in a place of fear, or we're in a place of, yeah, I mean, fear is generally it. Fear is the kind of vibrational frequency. It's got loads of different names, right? Because fear can show up in different ways. But when we come back to what we're talking about being like heart-led, it's like, are we coming from a place of love? Okay, because love and fear have a very different vibrational frequency. And so if we're taking full radical responsibility, as I've mentioned, for ourselves, for our feelings, for our choices, for everything, we've got to be conscious, right? You can't be getting up, rolling out of bed and just doing what you do every morning without thinking. Go to the toilet and then go flick the kettle on, open up this, and you just, you know what I mean? You get into the car and you got your coffee and, you do the thing that you do. There's no like active participation. And so conscious living is like being like, okay, what am I doing? Am I just getting home and having my glass of wine because, I have to have a glass of wine, I'm so tired? Is there something else you could be doing? Do you see how we can just get into that loop, right? That's not conscious living. And so for us to be fully present with the people in our lives, with our relationships, with our children, with our staff, with our employees, we can't be running on all autopilot. We've got to get into the now. We've got to get conscious. We've got to understand, like, what are the things that drive us? Are some of them serving us? Are some of them maybe not serving us? And change them. We can change anything, right? We run on programs. So if you don't like the current program, you got to switch it up. It's not the easiest thing, right? It's not, I'm not saying it's super easy, but it does take time and consistency. But there's support out there. There's people there. You know what I mean? There's things you can do. I've had people that literally, if I look at the way they were at when we started and 6 months later, their life has completely changed.
Okay, so thank you so much for joining this show. Before winding up, my last question will be like, what will be your final message to the younger generation who are striving to bring a change to the world?
I think for the younger generation, they have such a ability right now. I mean, the younger generation have created a lot of change, right? There are things that they question, They do want to make a bigger. I think there's a balance with everybody. I know sometimes the younger generations, the Gen Zs and millennials, don't always get the best rap because they entitled and they this or they that or they that. Possibly, but there is a yearning to learn, right? And so I've spoken to Gen Zs to millennials where like there's been perhaps a expectation that needs to be managed. And if you speak to them and explain, well, they get it, right? You know what I mean? It's not about them being not getting it, but some generations are like, oh, every generation's like, back in my day, it's what we do. But I think they have an ability to make a difference in the world. I think we can't get hung up on the BS, right? I think this whole idea of like blocking people and canceling people like has to stop, right? That's coming from a place of fear. I think they have the ability to. I speak to so many younger generation now, and there is a consciousness about them. They want to know more. They want to change. They want to do things differently. So carry on, but do the work, right? Don't look outwards for it. Don't look outwards. Don't become a victim and don't play the blame game, right? So, right, blame, excuse, denial, bed. So if you're lying in your bed, you're either blaming, you're giving excuses, or denial, right? It's about taking ownership, okay, of your ship, owning your ship. So that's having your oar. Ownership, accountability, responsibility. So when you're going through life, so this is where we talk about a point of power. Are you above the line, taking ownership, accountability, and responsibility? Or are you below the line, constantly blaming, making excuses, or living in denial? And we all do it. So it's about being aware. Are you doing it? Because you're not empowering yourself. You're giving away your power. Don't be a victim. Okay? Don't blame. There's no reason for it's no one's fault you are where you are today. You are fully responsible for it. And if you don't like it, you can change it. So as soon as we start taking that, and I think we have the ability to do it, especially the younger generation, they're going to have the most buying power. They're going to have the most saying, this generation's moving forward at the moment and, not having many kids. Kids are going on decline. But I think it's an important time for us to make a difference, but take radical responsibility. It's no one else's fault. When we start doing that, because this is part of the problem we have, if we look back at what's happened generations and some of the terrible things that have happened in our generations that are still impacting us today, we're talking about race and culture and all these kind of things. But we've got to recognize where we went wrong and we've got to change it, right? We can't keep beating the drum on what's happened before because it's never going to stop it. This is what happens in society where we look at it, things happen that are shitty. And we look back and go, we didn't do well then. How do we do better? And so we have this opportunity to, how do we do better? Okay, we don't have to keep talking about the shitty thing that was done because the person who did it when it started didn't know better. We now know better. So we're not passing judgment on what happened. We're looking forward to make sure it doesn't happen again. And I think that's the most important thing that we need to do because that is how we're going to make real change when we don't keep on looking over our shoulder and saying, yes, but.
Well, that's really strong message what we have given to the younger generation. I hope they listen and hope they cultivate the values what we're given right now. So I think it's getting late for you, I think maybe. So thank you so much for joining this show. It was really an honor to have you as a special guest for our podcast known as Heart Centered Whispers. It's really lucky to have you. And to be honest, I'm really honored to have you as the first special guest to our show and talking about this emotional intelligence, empathy, about how to embrace the AI and your strong life mantra code, which you told. And the funny thing, what I heard that you're just living next to my door, I guess, to be honest. Even the walls are still shocked that you have exactly told who am I, to be honest. Beside that, focusing on whatever you said, all that important things, it was really amazing and just learned so many things. And I just wish that we had more time speaking on this, to be honest. Because if you start talking with me in personally, like if I say it, this will keep on going, to be honest. I will keep on asking more and more questions, but that's not what we have agreed here for. But I'm really happy and thankful for you to join this show. I hope we can meet again very soon. And so thank you, Adil, for joining this show. And I really feel grateful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sachin. Lovely meeting you. We'll chat soon. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Bye bye. Have a
Bye.
good